This program is brought to you by Pussy Magnets.
Put a midge on your friend with a pussy magnet.
Welcome, my lovely lumps. Or should I say lovely labs? I'm so thrilled to have you here in the Labia Lounge to yarn about all things sexuality, womanhood, holistic health, and everything in between. Your legs. Can never help myself. Anyway, we're going to have vag loads of real chats with real people about real shit. So buckle up. You're about to receive the sex ed that you never had and have a bloody good laugh while you're at it. Before we get stuck in, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this, the Menang people. It's an absolute privilege to be living and creating dope podcast content on Noongar country, and I pay respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. Now, if you're all ready, let's flap and do this. Oh God, is there such thing as too many vagina jokes in the one intro? Whatever, I'm leaving it in. It's my podcast.
Don't panic, you're not broken. Your sex education was a piece of shit. Get your flaps out and pull up a couch. It's the Labia Lounge.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the lounge. I've got a really interesting one for you this week because I'm interviewing the founder of a company called Awkward Essentials, Frances Tang, who has come up with some pretty hilarious but practical solutions to a couple of common niggles that us vag owners contend with on the reg. And we'll get into that in a sec, but I'll just give you a little bit of a rundown on Frances. Wait, would I say Frances or Francis?
One of them sounds very Australian, and one of them, I like the first one.
Oh, Francis. Is that the one that sounds?
That sounds cooler.
Australian?
Yeah, because like American, we're like Francis, which is,
Gotcha. Francis is the founder / Captain Awkward / CEO of Awkward Essentials, a company that makes products that address the unspoken parts of hygiene. She's also the inventor of the Dripstick, an after-sex cleanup sponge. With a background ranging from hula dancing to baking to wedding photography, she never intended to build a company around post-sex cleanup. However, after accidentally launching in the UK a month before she got married, Frances built one anyway. She's also a super cheerleader for fearlessness, trying new hobbies, and ice cream. Nice! Welcome, you bad thing.
Thank you. Stoked to be here.
So, to just launch in and give everyone a bit of background, so Awkward Essentials got in touch with me to offer me some free samples of both of your products, Frances. And, you know, they're kind of relevant to the field that I'm in. And I was like, okay, let's have a little look at this. And I just had such a laugh looking at all of the Instagram videos, and just like the marketing and sort of brand identity was very humorous, very playful, very cheeky. And I was like, I can get around this. And I haven't actually tried the Dripstick or the mainstream yet because they just arrived from the US and my partner's been away since I got hold of them. But I'm dying to give it a go because it's such a funny idea to me, but also once you get over the shock of being like, what? A cum sponge on a stick? Then you're like, actually, that makes a lot of sense. So can you just tell us first about the Dripstick? We can get into the mainstream in a sec, but let's just let everyone know what the fuck we're talking about here when we say a cum sponge or a Dripstick.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. Really excited to be here and talk about sex and cum and pee and like all the things. So a Dripstick is an after sex cleanup sponge. It is a sterile medical grade sponge with a handle that is inserted after sex to absorb all the cum, basically. Right. So people are like, oh, like, how did you come up with this? Like, why did you create it? And I'm like, I don't like cum. Like, that's just me personally. And so for me, whenever I would have sex with my husband afterwards, like I would do the thing that a lot of us do, like run to the bathroom and pee, of course, to avoid those UTIs. But it just didn't get everything out. And so over the years, I got to the point where I was like jumping in the shower and like using my finger to like kind of scoop it out, like, you know, like scoop the inside, like just let me just like get this out at the source so it's not like dripping onto my sheets, or I don't have to deal with it the next morning when I'm at work and like it feels like you're getting your period, but it's not your period. That like gushy feeling. And so
Yeah.
I would Google it all the time and I just couldn't find a answer. A lot of people were like, oh, just use like a towel or I use wet wipes, stuff like that, which is a great solution for the outside. But in my mind, I was like, okay, but all of his like jizz is inside of me and it would be, I just would like to get it out. And so, like you mentioned in my bio, I love baking. And every time I would use a rubber spatula to scrape cake batter out of a bowl, I would think, whoa, it would be so great if I had a rubber spatula for my vagina. I could just like scoop it out. You know, cake batter is really thick. Cum is really thick. If I could just like scoop it out in one felt like swoop, and then I wouldn't have to deal with it anymore. And so,
Oh my God.
that is where the inspiration for Dripstick came from. Not a rubber spatula, just a sponge, no additives, nothing else. It doesn't prevent pregnancy. It doesn't prevent UTIs, STDs, STIs. So of course, like get checked, but I just wanted something that would get rid of all the extra cum so I could be more comfortable.
Oh my God. I love that so much. It's it's one of those things that you're like, at first it seemed a bit gross or weird to me. I was like, oh, hang on, I don't know about that. But then I was like, wait a second, it's so practical. It's actually just such a mechanical, it's like, okay, so there's cum. It's thick, it's moist, it's gonna stay around up there for possibly, like sometimes you get like that latent drip like an hour later or something. And depending on your vagina, like, you know, some vaginal canals are longer than others. And obviously there's that whole sort of pocket that gets created down behind the cervix where the cum, it's basically like a cave or a swimming pool for the cum to hang out while it waits for an egg. So your vag is designed to harbor jizz and like keep it in there for like longer. So it doesn't automatically just trickle straight out. Like, you know, you're jumping in the shower, you're trying to like squat or cough over the toilet. And sometimes you think you got it all out and then, yeah, like you said, you get to work or whatever. And all of a sudden you've got all of this goo in your undies and you're like, oh, for God's sake. So just literally like something as practical and obvious as a sponge makes so much sense. I guess it's kind of like a cum tampon in a way. And I love that for you. That's like,
Thank you.
such a cool thing to
It is. And
just follow through with. Like everyone has ideas, but like, do they do them? No. But you made one.
I think to be a founder, you have to be a little crazy because it's, especially to like do this, I'm like, I'm going to create a cum sponge. It definitely was not easy. And I did try a tampon 100% because we see that a lot online. Like, okay, well, what's the difference between this and a tampon?
Yeah.
I tried one. And it kind of turned into this like slimy, like bullet thing that like slid out just because it was it's meant for blood, which is like so much thinner. And so
more liquidy.
Yeah. And for an extended period of time. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, but I want it to like absorb something like thicker, faster. So what would help? And that's where I came upon the idea for a sponge.
Yeah, amazing. So, how long do you have to put it in for before it soaks it all up? Like, can it be, my first thought was like, oh, that sounds like it might be abrasive or irritating, but, you know, I know it's medical grade sponge and it's obviously designed for such a sensitive part of the body. So just talk us through like, you know, how long you put it in for. Do you swivel it around? Like, what's the vibe?
So it doesn't have to stay in for that long, probably just a couple seconds. So you gently insert it and then you can twist it around or not. It's like totally up to you. We've heard of some of our customers kind of just like crossing their legs a little and like squishing it around. All bodies, all vaginas are different. And then just removing. Yeah. And then in terms of insertion, we tell people to wait until the cum is like at the base of the vaginal canal because it needs to slide against something, right? Yeah. So if he came like really deep inside, I would just wait. I would wait till it kind of drips down so it has something to absorb. And it's
bit of lubrication.
Yeah. And it's really hard. It's kind of like it's kind of like lube itself, right? Because if the lube was really deep inside, like it would be weird for like the penis to go in. And so, it's been interesting trying to give like overarching general instructions to people when a lot of it is like what works for your body. Like all vaginas are different.
Yeah.
Or maybe you like the cum and you don't want to get rid of it, which is totally fine with us too. Like you do not need Dripstick. I like to make that very clear. Like we've had people write and say, but I love the cum. I like feeling it the next day and like knowing that he's with me. And we're like, that's fantastic. Like, cool.
Hey,
like,
good for you.
like you don't have to use it. It's not by any means for everybody. It's just so that you can just feel more comfortable or go for a run on Saturday morning without having to worry about it. We hear so many different interesting use cases that we never even thought of until people like bring them to us.
Yeah. Do you have any off the top of your dome that you can give us an example of?
I mean, it's a lot of the times it is exercising, and I'm like an exercise person. And so just like people who like to ride their Peloton, right? Because you don't want like those squishy pants like the next morning or the next day. People who like to run in the morning, we hear a lot from like a lot of runners, which is super interesting. Every once in a while, we'll hear from like marriage and family therapists, and it's like a mental load thing, which I think I understand the mental load thing immensely. I think we all do, but just not have to worry about it makes you more willing to want to have sex. Cause it's like, okay, I don't have to think 3 steps ahead about like bringing an extra pair of underwear or it possibly leaking out or it creating like a wet spot in the front of my dress. It's like so wild. It's these little things. But if it can help, then we're excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is definitely something that like I'll take into consideration, you know, on a case by case basis. Like sometimes I know that I'm going to be having a shower or a bath straight after and I've got plenty of time and I don't have to go anywhere, so it's fine. Other times, because like my partner and I, we kind of just choose whether or not he comes inside me, and like a lot of the time he doesn't, because we just prefer like he'll prefer not to ejaculate sometimes and just retain that energy and everything like that. But then sometimes it is really nice to just have someone come inside you and to share that. If I'm not ovulating, of course. But sometimes I'm like, oof, it's just not practical right now, and I can't be bothered like dealing with the drip. And the wet patch on the bed, or, you know, having to get another pair of undies. So it's hilarious that this, I don't know how long this company has been around, but I was on a podcast maybe a year ago, and it was on someone else's podcast, and she was asking me like, okay, so I need to know, like, what do you do afterwards when you've got the cum drip? How do you get it out? It's so annoying. Like, I use my fingers to scoop it out in the shower, but it's not very effective, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't know about the Dripstick at this point. So I wish I did. I'll definitely be sending her an email.
Yeah, happy to send her a box. Because she sounds like me, like a few years ago, right? Exactly that. I mean, it's just, it's a personal preference. Some people don't like it and some people like it.
Yeah, totally. And it's good to have the option, you know, like it's maybe you don't use it every single time, but it's really handy to have one in your purse when you're on holiday or you're just in a situation where you don't want to deal with that. So it's awesome. It's super empowering as well, like for vagina owners. So like, give me a bit of a rundown on your background, because I feel like it sounds like this was very left of field for you. And, you know, it's one thing to have an idea about something, but it's a completely different thing to actually put it into motion and follow through with that idea to this degree, especially when it's something that's so stigmatized and taboo. So like, what gives you the get up and go and the drive to actually go, no, you know what, I'm going to go and get a prototype made. I'm going to research medical grade sponges, like, you know, because it's a whole thing. Hey, Babe Towns. So sorry to interrupt, but I simply had to pop my head into the lounge here and mention another virtual lounge that you've got to get around. It's the Labia Lounge Facebook group that I've created for listeners of the potty to mingle in. And there you'll find extra bits and bobs like freebies or discounts for offerings from guests who've been interviewed on the podcast, inspiring and thought-provoking conversations, and support from a community of labial legends. I also have an account on the fab new app Sunroom, which is a platform created by women for women and non-binary folk, and where there's no shadow banning or censorship of sex-positive content, unlike with the other platforms that I'm on. So you can hit up my Sunroom for extra content and real and raw life updates, because I'll be sharing on there from now on all of the stuff that I can't post anywhere else. My vision for both of these is that they become really supportive, educational, and hilarious resources for you to have more access to me and a safe space to ask questions that you can't ask anywhere else. So head over to the links in the show notes and I'll hopefully see you in there. And now, back to the episode.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of jobs and I like starting businesses. I knew I wanted to start a business that was scalable one day. And so kind of like moving through life, trying different things. I tell a lot of people that I'm a multi-potentialite, or I like skill stacking, which multi-potentialite is, you know, people who like to really dive in and get really good at certain things and then they'll move on. And so I do credit the path of where we've gotten to that, to having tried so many different things and seen a bunch of different industries. Like, for example, the baking thing, that was the inspiration for this. So had I not loved baking, been a baker at one point, I don't know that I would have had the idea for this. And in terms of creating the product, I mean, it was just something that I was facing and I was like, I want to solve this. Like I wasn't thinking like, okay, I would like to go into the sex industry, or like, oh, I'm nervous because this is a sex product. In my mind, it was like a pretty practical thing. I was like, okay, well, here's a solution and it doesn't quite exist yet. And a couple of things had to happen for it to come to life. So I had applied to an accelerator called Grid 110. It's in Los Angeles, but now it's nationwide in the US. And I applied just on the idea and I got in. And I remember thinking like, whoa, there's at least one other person in the world that's not one of my friends or like family members who thinks that this could be a thing. Like this could work. Like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And so I went in and I did this accelerator, and it was such a great experience. And it really taught me how to talk about it. So from there, I learned, okay, the best way for me to talk about this is to just talk about my personal story and to leverage that humor. Cause like we're talking about cum, it's not that serious, right? Like we're not, it's literally just a sponge. We're just talking about cum. It isn't a serious thing at all. And I found that was kind of the best way to break that like awkward barrier, because so many, I think, products and companies are like, raise your hand if you experience blah, blah, blah. But when I said, raise your hand if you don't like cum in your vagina, literally no one is like, and I'm like, really? Like you have children. Obviously you've had cum in your vagina at one point in your life. And so learning how to talk about it was very important, and just different things. I mean, I talk about how one of our advisors is Cindy Gallup, and asking for someone to like a cold intro to her and then having her email me back and like be super into it and excited and willing to be an advisor. That was like the other thing that really made me think, okay, like I think I can do this. Cause I think as female founders, we're not hardwired to say like, I have this idea, I'm going to go raise money, I'm going to do it and it's going to work. Like that is absolutely not how the majority of us think. Like, I think we do more research. We want confirmation. We want to make sure things are going to, which is why female founders are typically more successful in general. But it was slow, and it was definitely scary putting this out there. And so I think the final confirmation that I got, like, okay, this is going to be a thing, was we accidentally went viral in the UK. You referenced it in my bio. And so what happened was I took a chance and I had like my 20,000 prototype, like cum sponges in my parents' house. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to move these things? And everyone kept asking me, how does it work? Like, can you just like show me or describe to me how it works? And so I went to Amazon and I wanted to buy an anatomical plastic like vaginal canal so I could do like a little demo, but they are so expensive. Like I don't remember. I remember I was just like, I can't afford this. Like, how am I going to do a demo? I can't. It's like I don't even know if people want this thing. So I ended up using a Twinkie, which is like the cream filled like cake, and just filming something with my iPhone, right? Like I just want to show whoever is asking that you like put the dripstick in, it gets the cream out. That's simply how it works. And so we ended up going viral overnight because a writer from Huffington Post UK like found what I was doing. I think I posted on a few Facebook groups just to get like some feedback. And so she found it, did an article, and then we had like dozens of articles that day. And it was very much like your Bay Area startup story where I had to invite my friends over. We're packing boxes, just shipping things out of my parents' house. It was chaos. It was really cool, but it was kind of like that final piece of confirmation that I needed. Like, okay, I'm not crazy. There's other people who are willing to pay for a product because it bothers them enough. And just some of the DMs that we got, I was like, oh my gosh, like people were like, I thought I was the only one that experienced this, or I thought there was something wrong with my vagina and I was the only person. And like, to me, that's so wild, right? Like it's kind of a universal experience. Whether or not it bothers you is different, but it is a universal experience. And so for people to not say anything whatsoever and just be like, there's something wrong with me is it's very bittersweet.
Yeah. It's pretty heartbreaking. That's like kind of a big driver of why I do what I do and why I've started this podcast and why I have the TMI segment, because so many experiences that clients will talk to me about, they feel as though they're the only people that are having that experience and they feel like there's something wrong with them because of it. And I'm just like sitting there going, bitch, you're like the 50 millionth person who's told me that, like, don't worry, you're not alone. But like, why are we not talking about this more? We could save so many people from like the anguish and loneliness of thinking that they're broken or thinking that they're weird or strange or abnormal, and just suffering in silence. And not discovering something like the Dripstick because they don't tell anyone. And so their girlfriend doesn't go, oh, I've heard of something for that. Like the more we talk about this, the more we can actually swap ideas and solutions and experiences and normalize it all. So yeah, definitely like talking my language.
Yeah, it's just wild. And interestingly enough, we have a lot of men that purchase the product for their partner because it's very solution oriented. And it's opened up this conversation where, yes, we have a lot of men who purchase for their partner, but oftentimes we also have men who will like email us and just be like, I had no idea this was a thing in the first place. And so they'll like have a conversation and it'll open up other things like, okay, well, what are other things that you experience or go through that I just have no idea is happening? And it's pretty cool. It's nice to facilitate or be a small part of facilitating that open conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's the best thing you could possibly do in the world, I think, with regards to all of this stuff that is so stigmatized. And I always get so annoyed when I watch, I get annoyed for a million reasons when I watch sex scenes in movies, mainstream movies, but I get really riled. I'm just like, what the fuck? They just had sex. I definitely didn't see them put a dinger on. And not only was it only about a minute long, if that, with zero foreplay, but now he's just come, they've rolled over in bed and there's like zero, or like she's just like pulling up her undies and off they go. And I'm like always thinking about the drip. I'm like, oh God. There's no cleanup going on. There's no talk of it. There's no discussing it. They just like, they're like rolling over in bed, having a lovely romantic time. Maybe they'll go back at it in like half an hour when it's all crusted up. It's just like who, and so what I'd love to see is like, how you kind of do see the little sex rituals or after sex rituals sometimes portrayed, and sometimes talked about, like, for instance, the guy taking off the condom and tying a little knot in it. Like that's an after sex ritual that happens. And we see a bit more of that.
Sometimes.
I would love to see a dripstick get pulled out in a movie after sex while he's tying the knot in. Oh, wait, no. I guess there wouldn't be cum if he wore a condom. Anyway, yeah, like wouldn't that be just so cool if it became so common and so normalized that it was, yeah, just this kind of household thing that got used in the mainstream?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of ideally where I'd love
That's
just
the
to like
goal.
normalize it, just have it be another thing available for people. I mean, we'll hear from our customers like, okay, like now my husband knows to like hand me a dripstick after we're done. Like I've trained him, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like that's awesome. That's a cool routine. But I mean, they don't even normalize peeing after sex in the movies, which is like,
Yeah.
that's like,
That's number
I
one.
know. So it's,
Oh God. Well, speaking of things that are not normalized and not talked about, let's do the segment "Get Pregnant and Die."
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die.
Don't have sex in the missionary position. Don't have sex standing up. Just don't do it. Promise?
So, do you have a story from when you were younger around your sex education? Maybe how it failed you, maybe how it helped you, maybe something you would have liked to have learnt more about, or any like negative messaging that you received or positive messaging you received. I'm just curious about how your sex education was for you, because obviously now you're heading a pretty sex positive business.
it's pretty wild. So I can hardly remember sex ed. All I remember is like passing up the anonymous like question notes to like the front of the class when I was in high school. But I also have a terrible memory. But where sex ed failed me was it was not like crazy clear to me to pee after sex. And I had been having sex for like, I don't know, maybe a year or two, no, like a few years, right? And so in college was when I had my first UTI. And so I had a top bunk. Like I was in a dorm and I was on the top bunk. And first of all, I didn't even know what a UTI was. I had never even heard of the term or knew how to spell, like what is that? And so like everything was burning down there and I like had no idea why. And I think it was like a weekend, like a Saturday or Sunday. So the health services center was not open. And I was like Googling like burning, like crotch. I finally figured out what it was. And I was just like, it's not open. How am I going to go see a doctor for this? And so I'm like on the top bunk and it hurts so bad. I think I like bribed someone to like drive me to CVS to get like cranberry juice, but it wasn't that effective. And so I remember that night I had to sleep on the ground on my, like in my dorm room so I could like run to the bathroom and like painfully pee and like no pee's even coming out. And so that was how I learned what a UTI was.
Yeah. Oh, first UTI is so mortifying. It's like so much worse than you expect. And yeah, just that like, I mean, it's painful, but then also the frustration of feeling as though you need to pee constantly and then actually not being able to pee is just like, oh, kill me. Being on a top bunk, God. Yeah, and that kind of like makes me think of your other product, the mainstream, which is a pee funnel, because I've even talked about it on the podcast, I'm pretty sure. Like I've often like thought, oh, I wish I just had a funnel because I had a few loft beds in my time. I really liked sleeping up high. I had the loft bed so I could fit more stuff underneath it when I was living in like little shoebox rooms in share houses in Melbourne. And it was such a nightmare getting up and down to wee. And I used to think, oh, I wish I could rig up some kind of contraption with like a funnel. And sometimes I would like, if I'm in a tight spot, like sleeping in a certain place that's really tricky to like get to the toilet, or it's just too, like in a tent at a camping festival when it's bucketing rain outside, for instance, and there's no toilets nearby and you have to like go and pee in the bush, but it's raining and you don't really want it, I've like sometimes kept a jar or something like that. And I just like had such a laugh when I got these mainstreams in the mail because it's like a she-wee, like a pee funnel. So talk to me about that because that's another one of your funny little practical products.
So I am also that person that has to pee all the time. And I have to pee in the middle of the night, and it is so annoying. And it is the worst thing. And so I'll show what mainstream is. We created, so pee funnels are by no means like new. They've been on the market for a while, like you're saying, the Shiwi. But me personally, I'm not comfortable using something that I peed on and then like putting it back in my bag, because I'm like, well, how am I going to wipe it down, or do I put it in a Ziploc bag every time? Like, what is the best way to do this? And then on top of that, we noticed that a lot of the funnels on the market weren't super portable. So if you are like at a festival or you have like a tiny little purse, what are you going to do? Or if you want to like keep these things in your car. So mainstream, it comes in a bag. So it comes in this bag, and then you open it up and there is a funnel and then toilet paper. We are going to release a version very soon that actually also has hand sanitizer. So you have everything you need like in one packet, but this is the funnel. So you unfold it like this, and then you can like pop it open here, and then you can stand up and pee. You can use the toilet paper, because we found that some of the other ones don't come with toilet paper, and it's like, well, you need to wipe.
Totally.
And then what you can do is you can fold it back, and you could stick it back in this bag, which has like a zip, and it won't leak. Because if you can't find a trash can, or you're like in the middle of the woods, or like you don't want to throw it, you're not supposed to throw it in the porta potty, you can stick it back in here and then close it, and then wait till you find a trash can to throw it away. And so, I mean, this is also just one of those other things. I do think that we talk about having to pee all the time a lot more than like cum stuck in your vagina, but it's still like another thing. And so, they've been super convenient. We have a lot of people that use it, whether they are going to like raves or festivals or camping, like you said, or going on long road trips. We've seen some interesting use cases from folks who have had like, I think in one of our reviews, someone mentioned they had some kind of like surgery. So they just couldn't like sit down and pee by themselves. So they just used mainstream, and they're able to like stand up and pee and didn't have to like bring someone to the bathroom with them every time, which is like also a really cool use case.
Great. Love it. I mean, I've always wished that I could pee standing up. Like when I was a kid, I just really wanted to be a boy because I wanted a willy so that I could pee standing up like my brothers and my dad, because it just seems so convenient and practical. And I've really tried, but it's a bit messy.
It's hard.
It's not like a sure thing.
You know so when you do get a chance to try mainstream, what is totally unusual and like a weird feeling is facing the toilet instead of facing away from the toilet. Cause like 100% of pretty much any vagina owner's life, you're facing away from the toilet whenever you need to go to the bathroom. But to use the funnel, you have to face towards the toilet. And so it almost like takes a second to like get comfortable and then like relax enough to pee in the funnel. And then it's just like, it's like weird being so much higher.
Totally. I struggled to like when I first wore a wetsuit and I was trying to like my partner's like, you got to pee in your wetsuit. It's the best experience. And like, you're going to be in the water all day surfing. So it's not a big deal. And I was like, oh my God. Okay. Cause you know, once you get that wetsuit on, you can't get it off. It's very difficult to get it off, and you kind of don't want to, cause then you got to go all the way back in and and peeing in a wet wetsuit when you're in the water is like totally fine. But trying to pee in a dry wetsuit, this is a unique experience because it's like you're wearing clothes and your body is just like, no, we do not pee when there is like fabric touching our pusswaaaah. Like that's not, it's really hard. It's so ingrained in your body. It's like having to try to piss yourself. And it's such a trip. Like it's a crazy experience. And I've just got so many stories about this kind of thing. It's so funny to me. Like even I've always been so curious about what it would be like to be able to pee standing up and like aim and stuff. So, you know, in the past, boyfriends have let me hold their penis while they're weeing, and I'm like sort of swinging it around, doing it. Like it's so cool. Love it. There's this product now because one of my one of my best friends, when she was a kid, she was able to sort of pull back her labia and like her clitoral hood and just sort of pull it all back and then aim pee like standing up, and she could like pee off things. And she's like, yeah, it was actually like, it was pretty much as straightforward as a guy just sort of pulling his pants down a little bit, and she could even like pull her undies to the side and do it. And she was telling me about this, and I was like, get the fuck out, really? Like what? And I've tried to do it in the shower, and it's not ideal. The first time I tried to do that, I was sitting on the toilet doing a wee, and I was like, oh, I wonder, I'll just like go to pull the skin up and back. And that was so silly because it actually just sprayed all the way out of the toilet, because it does sort of redirect it and it makes it go up. And I was like, oh my God, what the fuck did I just do? And then, recently like just got really into the idea of like adventure weeing off the top of things, because like Lockie, my partner, like if we go on a big hike or a bushwalk or on some amazing big rocks at the ocean or something, and he'll just like get on the highest thing and piss off it, and I like really want to do that, but I usually just have to pop a squat like right up on top of a rock or something. So I'm super excited. We've got big boulders at this house that I just moved into, and a friend of mine came over and I said, look what just arrived in the mail, and she was like, holy shit, let's get up on the big rock and piss off it. And we forgot, but we will do it.
Wait, we would love a video of this if you are down. Because
all right,
it's so much more impactful to have like a stream than to like squat and like do it that way.
Oh yeah. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. But it is like we were a little bit like, all right, we've got to really work ourselves up to this, because it feels as though it feels unnatural, and it does feel as though something's going to go wrong somehow and we're going to get wee on us. So I think it's what's going to happen is we'll do it and actually be like, oh, wow, this actually just works really well. I don't know what I was worried about. But that sort of moment where you've got to retrain your body to let go of your bladder when you're standing up and you're in a totally different position and you've got clothes on. And yeah, I can see that being like kind of difficult in the beginning until you get used to it.
Yeah, it is very weird. I mean, I think a good way to test it, if you're worried about round 2 of everything spraying everywhere, is like to just use it in the shower and just see. Yeah. But it's exactly what you're saying. Like it takes a second for your mind and body to be like, okay, I'm going to pee standing up facing this direction, which I've like never done. And then it's fine. But it's unusual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can't wait. All right. I'll get a video for you. Excuse the interruption, my loves, but I'm shamelessly seeking reviews and 5-star ratings for the potty because, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, it's pretty fab. And the more people who get to hear it, the more people it can help. Reviews and ratings help me curry favor with the algorithmic gods and get suggested to other listeners to check out. Plus, they make me feel really good and appreciated as I continue to pour my heart and soul into creating this baby for you. And I promise I don't mazz over them or anything. I mostly just tuck them away for a rainy day when I'm filled with self-doubt and existential dread about being self-employed, which is fairly frequently. So you see, leaving a review really does make a difference, and it's an easy little act of support that you can take in just a minute or two by either going to Spotify and leaving 5 stars for the show, or writing a written review and leaving 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts. Choose your poison, or if you're a real overachiever, you could do both. Whoa now. If you are writing a review though, just be sure to only use G-rated words, because despite the fact that this is a podcast about sexuality, words like sex can be censored and your review won't actually show up. Lame. Anyway, oh, what was that? Oh, you're going to go do it right now while I wait. Okay. Yeah. No, that's a great idea. May as well just quickly click that 5-star button before we get on with it and, forget about it and get on with your day. I'm hearing them roll in. I'm hearing those 5 stars. Oh my God, I make myself cringe. Anyway, thank you much, Lee. You're a total gem, and I'll let you get back to the episode now. So, have you had much backlash or shaming around this? Because my work, for instance, it definitely gets a mixed response, and I definitely sort of pick my battles with who I even tell what I do and whether I can be bothered explaining it and having a conversation and, answering all of their questions. And I'm wondering what the general response is that you get, and what does your family think? I bet you get that question all the time, but yeah, how did you tell them you're starting a business selling cum sponges? And do you get not like mean comments online, or like what's the climate around your business and these products generally?
So I can start with my family. They're Asian, which you'd think they would be like, what is going on? Or I'd hide it. But what's, I guess, kind of funny is that my dad is also a business owner, like founder type person, not in this space, in like the tech, a completely different world. But when I started this, he's like, okay, cool. You found a problem. You came up with a solution. Now, how are you going to grow the business? Like strictly just thinking about it in terms of problem, solution, grow the business. Like that's it. And he's like, why are people asking you what I think about this? Right? Like if you need toilet paper for your ass, then isn't it like the same thing? Like you need this for your, like, what is the difference? And so it's very, very, very practical. My mom, she knows what I'm doing and she's just kind of like, cool. Like she doesn't ask a lot of questions. I think she's like kind of tried to explain it to her friends. I don't know how well she's done. But so it's been totally okay. So I'm pretty lucky to have, supportive parents. Cause I mean, I was shipping out at their house. They were my warehouse to start. My friends have been pretty awesome, very supportive. I do know in the beginning, some of them were like, what are you doing? Or like, why is this necessary? And so from the people of the internet, for the most part, it's similar to you. It's kind of like stages. So some folks are like, oh my gosh, this totally makes sense. Like I need this. I do not like cum in my vagina. Other folks we hear like, why is this necessary? Or like, I don't quite understand. But it's funny because even when you said that you had a similar reaction, even just talking through like, okay, but when I have sex, I think about like, I do have to think about these things, but I think like we're kind of conditioned to like get used to things or like adapt instead of thinking like, oh, there might be a solution for this. And so we hear both. And then on the complete other end, we do get backlash for using a Twinkie as a demo, which I don't know.
What?
Like
I think it's creative.
I've heard that like, so the feedback there is like, oh, well, like women's vaginas have been compared to like food for like a long time. But I don't know that I've ever heard a woman's vagina compared derogatorily to a Twinkie, because it's just like a demo, right? Like, how do we explain this without putting my vagina on the internet? I don't know. Because that would be the most anatomically correct way to explain it. And then we do hear.
I guess you could get a fleshlight and put like lube in a fleshlight or something, or get someone to come in a fleshlight.
Yeah. Oh, maybe we could do that and like send it to those people and then be like, do you prefer this instead? Like,
I know. I prefer the Twinkie.
It's a little more graphic, but you know, if you want something accurate. And then on the other end, we do hear from people who are like, this is completely unnecessary. Like we shouldn't. It's like, it's not a problem, but we do our best to make it very clear. Like, we just want to give people a choice, right? Like, this bothers some people. Some people are self-conscious about it. Like, I wish we were all empowered enough and like our lives were set up in a way that this did not bother us and that it just isn't a problem. But for some of us, it totally is. And so it's an interesting like debate and intersection of the internet opinions and thoughts and even like assumptions, right? Oftentimes we hear like, oh, this must have been created by a man. And I'm like, tell me where the men are that are thinking about my needs like 5 steps ahead right after they have come and rolled. Like, I don't like, can you take me to this forest of men? Because that's amazing. First of all, if they exist. But it's like, no, it was created by me for me and
people like you.
Yeah. And it's just, it's interesting to like hear the assumptions that are made. And we try to clarify as much as possible, which is why you heard me say like, it isn't for everyone. Some people prefer it. Totally fine. It's just an option for those who want it. But sometimes that messaging gets lost because the internet is the internet, and it sounds like you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, big time. And I guess like, I kind of see the line of thought with the people saying like, hang on, like come in vaginas is, natural. It's not necessary. Why are we trying to disrupt this sort of process? Because of like, I guess the entire like feminine hygiene industry, which is fucked, like all the sprays and the douches and the deodorants and the products and the plumpers and stuff for our pussies, like that is very problematic because it's basically like, creating this environment where we feel as though we need to use them because we're disgusting and we're smelly and we obviously have to clean and blah, blah, blah. And so I kind of feel like maybe those people are like thinking that this is a similar deal where you're like, you have to use this because you're gross otherwise with cum in your vag. But it's just like, no, it's like how there's pads, there's tampons, there's period panties, there's all these different solutions, there's moon cups. You don't have to use any of them. But for people that have a preference, it's really helpful and will help them feel like have peace of mind and feel a lot better and sort of cleaner and just more comfortable afterwards. So yeah, I'm like all about it. I totally back it. But I also see like, there's always going to be something that people on the internet are going to get their knickers in a knot about.
Always.
Their cum-soaked knickers in a knot. I'm wondering, like, do you have any other, like speaking of solutions to these problems that aren't, or not problems, but, like solutions to things that, no, I guess they're problems for certain people. Who cares? Wording's not important. What else is in the works? Like, do you have any, like, what's next for Awkward Essentials? Like any ideas on the horizon?
We do. And we like to say that we like behind the bathroom door problems. So all the stuff that you do in the bathroom, you shut the door, you don't want anyone to know about. I was just squeezing my pores last night, like
Yeah.
ingrown hair. Like I talk about taking tweezers to like my ingrown crotch hair all the time because sometimes you dig like a really good one out. But it's just like we do all this stuff in there and we don't really talk to anyone about it, but it's pretty universal. Or maybe you don't do it, which is fine too. And so those are the things that we want to solve for, or at least like try to make those problems a little bit easier.
Yeah. Love that. So have you got any products that you can tell us about that you've got kind of in the works?
I can't share yet. I will say that we're very interested in like pre and post sex because there's so many incredible sexual wellness companies that focus on like pleasure during. So the pre and post are definitely like categories that we gravitate towards. I think like sweat and hair and like crotch things are fascinating. And like you said, there's so many. I think sometimes we do get lumped into like those other product categories, but really the intention is to be thoughtful about it. Like there are no additives, there's no scents. It's only meant for cum. It's not to change anything. But as you probably know, it's kind of like an uphill battle trying to communicate messaging, especially about something that people might have like really strong automatic opinions about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a tricky like little niche to carve out really in between the sort of body shaming, feminine shaming hygiene products that are really disruptive to our vaginas and, the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So I was thinking like also it's a really good way, I imagine, to minimize like the disruption to the vaginal pH too, because like semen has an alkaline pH, whereas our vaginas are naturally acidic. And so sometimes like if we have cum sit in us for a while, that can throw the pH out of balance and like make us more at risk of thrush and BV and things like that from vaginal dysbiosis. So like I really dig the idea that by getting the cum out promptly, it sort of gives your vagina a chance to establish like a sort of pH balance again more quickly. And it saves the sheets, like obviously. So I'm wondering like, do you have any other benefits of using these that like I haven't thought of because I haven't used them yet, obviously? And how, so 2 questions, any other benefits that we haven't covered that you want to chat about? And just to like put people's minds at ease, like how safe is it? I know you've had OBGYNs like give it the green light. So I'd just love to, like give a little spiel on that just to make sure people like understand like, if it's safe for their vaginal health, because that's obviously like my number one priority.
So those are pretty much, I think we've talked about most of the benefits, and we've had a lot of feedback about what you just mentioned. It's not a medical product, so doesn't cure, doesn't prevent. I have to repeat, doesn't prevent pregnancies, STIs, STDs. You still have to pee after sex. It's not meant to replace going to the bathroom after sex whatsoever. In terms of the product itself, so the sponge is made out of a medical grade sponge, which is the same as a lot of swabs that are used like prior to vaginal surgery. It's the same as some non-latex condoms and the same as a contraceptive sponge, except there's no additives. And so we have a lot of feedback from medical professionals on our website, but it's not a medical product. Like at the end of the day, there's like zero additives. It's like a medical swab.
Yeah. Super neutral and no sort of risk of, throwing out your vagina or anything with any weird shit in there.
Yeah. There's nothing added. And so we try to stress that. And we also try to stress only use it if there's cum. Like your vagina is not dirty. Vaginas are self-cleaning. Absolutely. 100%. Like we totally agree. Like it's just for extra cum.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Cause I mean, it'd be like putting a tampon in when you don't have your period. Like it would just dry the fuck up
exactly.
in there.
Yeah. And so we're like, it's just for cum, and we try to make it clear, but as many places as possible.
Yeah. Oh gosh. All right. Well, before we wrap up, I'd love to do the segment TMI. We love it.
TMI, we love it. Said TMI, we love it.
So I know you're probably full of TMI stories. It's kind of, it comes with the territory when you're in the industries that we're in. So what have you got for us?
Oh my goodness. I'm trying to think about, I think about creating this was probably my biggest TMI story. The UTI one was pretty good. Oh, okay. I have one that I think is like pretty relevant to your audience. So,
hey, me again. If you'd like to support the potty and you've already given it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening on, I want to mention that you can buy some really dope merch from the website and get yourself a Labia Lounge tote, tee, togs. Yep, you heard that right. I even have Labia Lounge bathers. Or a cute fanny pack if that'd blow your hair back. So if fashion isn't your passion, though, you can donate to my Buy Me a Coffee donation page, which is actually called Buy Me a Soy Chai Latte, because I'll be the first to admit I'm a bit of a Melbourne cafe tosser like that. And yes, that is my coffee order. You can do a once-off donation or an ongoing membership and sponsor me for as little as 3 fat ones a month. And I also have a Sunroom profile over on the Sunroom app, as I've mentioned. And I also offer one-on-one coaching and online courses that'll help you level up your sex life and relationship with yourself and others in a really big way. So every bit helps, because it ain't cheap to put out a sweet podcast into the world every week out of my own pocket. So I will be undyingly grateful if you support me and my biz financially in any of these ways. And if you like, I'll even give you a mental BJ with my mind from the lounge itself. Saucy. I'll pop the links in the show notes. Thank you. Later.
I didn't own a vibrator until I was like in college, like pretty late. And I had to have a friend, like that one friend. Now I'm that one friend. But at the time, it was that one friend and her name was Nikki. And she was the one that was like, wait, you've never had an orgasm? You don't own a vibrator? Like, we're going to get you one right now. So she was that person that like took me to the sex shop to get my first vibrator. It was like a pink plastic bullet, right? And it sat in my drawer like forever. Like I just didn't know how to use it. And I think that, I don't know how TMI this story, but I think it's important to like note, because I don't think it's that uncommon that we talk about like getting a vibrator and pleasure and all this stuff so often, but like, what do you do with it? How do you use it? And so I guess this is kind of a hint at something that we'll be launching very soon, because
Ooh.
we're very, in terms of the pleasure, like in the realm of pleasure, we're very cognizant about all the other things that we could be self-conscious about at the same time. So like, we don't mind talking about, okay, well, what if your roommate hears you using your vibrator? Like, am I going to feel like weird about that? Or like, what if your partner finds it? Is that going to be a weird conversation? So I think like fully realizing and understanding that there's not all the conversations are sexy, even if it's about something as sexy as a vibrator.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that buy sex toys or have bought sex toys in the past and then not really use them because it's daunting or they don't really know how, or especially wands, wands that don't have any vibrating parts. Like, it's not as obvious or accessible to like have an orgasm from that for a lot of people. So they'll often buy like, a jade egg and a crystal wand and this and that, and then it'll sit in the drawer because it's just something that they don't really know how to get the most out of, an experience with. I was just wondering, like, when you were, speaking of TMIs, when you were like developing the Dripstick, did you kind of get prototypes and then have to test them out on yourself? And like, how did that go? Or did you have a batch of friends that were all willing to test them, like a what do you call it? Like a test group or whatever?
Yeah, I totally had one friend who was like, yeah, I'll test it. And then I tested it myself, but it was it was like a weird thing. Like, I remember going to like these networking events and stuff, and people were like, what do you do? And I'm like, I made this cum sponge. Like, do you want one? And they're like, what? Like, maybe. Like, and even to this day,
and
I
did
get
it work
that.
straight away, or
yeah, it
like,
was.
did you have to go through a few different ones before you found one that was effective?
I did go through a couple different iterations. I have somewhere on my computer of all the different like drawings I did. It's so like, creating a product is such an interesting thing because it's relatively simple, right? It's like a sponge and like a stick and like a little paddle, and people are like, oh, like I could create that. And it's like, yeah, but it did take a lot of time to like get here. And I think one of the best practices for any founder is like leverage what's already out there, right? So the length and width is very similar to a tampon, intentionally, because those companies have the money and research and time to have done like, okay, average vaginal canal lengths and like widths. And so just jumping off of things that already exist to help you, because it's hard. I was just like a person in my parents' house.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, well, I'm so glad that you made it happen and that there is now this really practical, solution. And it's just got like such cheeky, playful branding. And it's like anything that's sort of underpinned with humor, I find very appealing personally. And then I think when it comes to a topic that is really stigmatized and taboo and shrouded in like shame and, like judgment, I think humor is such a beautiful way to make it more accessible to more people and act as like a bit of a gateway. And it's definitely something that I kind of I don't even mean to. I think it's just part of my personality, but that's definitely a tool that I use as well to make like these, crunchy or awkward conversations or topics just more palatable and more accessible to more people. So I really love the vibe that you are putting out. All of the content, the sort of the copy on your website, like the brand identity and the brand voice, it's all just like super on point. So I'd recommend everyone checks it out. And Frances has actually given us a discount code, which I'll put in the show notes and in the Labia Lounge Facebook group, along with links and everything like that. So you can check it out. And I would recommend following them on Instagram because there's like so many funny videos in there. Do you want to leave our listeners with any sort of words or thoughts, or is there anything that you feel we haven't touched upon that you'd like to chat about before we wrap up, Frances?
I think we've talked about a lot, but I would say you're not alone. If there's like a weird thing that you think or feel or are bothered by, it is 100% there's other people going through it too. So like, it's fine. Like, don't be afraid to talk about it because other people are definitely experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. That's so funny because every episode pretty much I'm like, there's so many things that people feel alone in or feel like they're broken. Are there any words of reassurance that you've got to offer? And I didn't phrase it that way this time, but you just basically did that and reassured people like you're not alone, you're not broken. So thank you. You've been a very well suited podcast guest for this podcast, whether you've listened to it or not. I don't know if you've listened to it before, but yeah, on brand, babe. Nice one.
Thank you for having me, Freya. This is cool.
See ya, everyone. And that's it, darling hearts. Thank you for stopping by the Labia Lounge. Your bum groove in the couch will be right where you left it, just waiting for you to sink back in for some more double L action next time. And in the meantime, if you'd be a dear and subscribe, share this episode, or leave a review on iTunes, then you can pat yourself on the snatch because that, my dear, is a downright act of sex-positive feminist activism. And you'd be supporting my vision to educate, empower, demystify, and destigmatize with this here podcast. Also, I'm always open to feedback, topic ideas that you'd love to hear covered, or guest suggestions. So feel free to get in touch via my website at freyagraph.com or say hey over on Insta. My handle is Freya_graph_YMT, and I seriously hope you're following me on there because damn, we have fun. We have fun. Anyway, later labial legends. I'll see you next time.